Rhythm is one of the most important pieces of music. And I can prove that by saying, if you take the wrong chords, notes, or scales, but play the right rhythm to a super iconic song, you'll probably be able to tell what song it is. But if you have all the right notes, chords, or scales, and you play a really weird rhythm, it'd be very difficult to tell the song because rhythm defines what you're hearing more than anything else. And today we're going to show you how music theory can help you improve your rhythm. Before we get started, if you want to follow along, we have a PDF with all of the terms and exercises that we're going to use in this video that could be super helpful for following along. And as we get into it, I want to define a few things. The first thing I want to define is what music theory is. So I define music theory as the process of naming sounds in order to recreate them. This simplifies music theory because a lot of people think it's about reading music or learning all your scales. But really what we're trying to do is just name what we hear. And that's super helpful because a lot of the things we already hear are already named, so we just have to memorize those names. So to start memorizing, let's talk about what rhythm is. Rhythm is notes throughout time. So there's a lot of complications to it, but it's really just hearing different notes throughout a period of time, or not hearing the notes. That's what rhythm is. And what a note is, it's simply a sound frequency. So it's a bunch of frequencies put together that make a definitive sound that we call a note. So like if you play an A on a piano, that is a note, but it's really just sound frequencies. And you could play those same frequencies from a keyboard or even like a bell, and you get the same note, it's just different context. So now that we understand these basic terms like rhythm, note, and music theory, it will really help us to understand like the in-depth features of what we're trying to learn. The next term we're going to talk about is called beat. I define a beat as the measurement of rhythm. When you hear that beat of 1, 2, 3, 4, you're measuring the rhythmic time. And it's similar to as time has minutes and seconds to measure them, rhythm has beats to measure it. And you can actually convert that into actual time, like minutes and seconds, with a term called beats per minute, which every song has. It's a pretty common one is 120 beats per minute. That means the song is going to have 120 beats every minute, which would be 2 beats every second. Great. So now that we understand these terms, let's talk about how we write them down. And this is helpful for even if you don't read written music, because a lot of people talk with these terms, even if they're not written. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a measure. And a measure is just a grouping of beats. So we decide how many beats go into one with other terms, but it's just we group beats together and it's usually repeated throughout the whole song. We determine the number of beats in a measure with another term called time signature. A time signature determines the number of beats. It also determines what written note gets a beat. And most of the time it's called a quarter note, and we're going to assume that for the rest of the video. So let's define written notes. The first written note we're going to talk about is a quarter note. And like I said earlier, we're going to assume it's the same as 1 beat. So every quarter note is equal to 1 beat. It's not always true, but that's what we're going to assume for this video. The next one we're going to talk about is a half note. A half note is equal to 2 quarter notes. So when 2 quarter notes get played, that is a half note. The next note we're going to talk about is a whole note. A whole note has 4 quarter notes. So when you play 4 beats or 4 quarter notes, that is 1 whole note. The last 2 notes we're going to talk about are eighth notes and 16th notes. They're slightly different than whole note and half notes as the quarter note is larger than them. So an eighth note needs 2 notes to equal 1 quarter note. So 2 eighth notes equals 1 quarter note. And a 16th note is just a little smaller than that, whereas 4 16th notes equals 1 quarter notes, or 2 16th notes equals 1 eighth note. Now that we've defined those terms, let's do some examples. The first example we're going to clap is just 4 quarter notes in a measure. This is known as 4/4 time, where there's 4 beats in that measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. So let's clap it. So we're going to clap 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. The second example we're going to do is half notes. So a half note gets 1 clap for every 2 quarter notes. That looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Let's do a whole note example, and that's 1 whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes, so it's just 1 clap for a measure. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The last 2 examples were going to be 1/8 notes and 1/16 notes. An 1/8 note has 2 notes per quarter note, so it's going to look like this. And in between quarter notes, we're going to use and, the term and, to separate out quarter notes. So it'll sound like this. 1, and, 2, and, 3, and, 4, and. And the last example will be 1/16 notes. We're going to separate it out. The terms will be 1, E, and so forth. So it sounds like this. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4, E, and Great. If that was helpful for you, please like and subscribe. And if you want to look up those terms and get the PDF to understand what I was saying, it'll be linked in the description and the first pinned comment.